As we watch the polls come in, there's some stuff that's obviously going to be a little bit frustrating tonight. All right, we're not sure of the House of Delegates that we're going to go back to. We're not sure what it's going to look like with respect to the governor, the attorney general, and the lieutenant governor. All right, and when things like that happen, it becomes very easy to ask yourself, okay, why do we keep fighting? And some of you have heard this story before, but I'll just tell it again. Again, when I was in Iraq in 2008 and Obama got elected, when I got home, my whole attitude was, I'm done fighting. I'm done fighting for people that don't care about it. All right? But then when my family gets to know all of you, we meet all of you, and we see other people who do care about it, who are willing to fight for it. We don't fight because we're guaranteed to win every single time. We fight because it's the right thing to do.
Deep in the heart of rural Virginia, there's a young member of the Virginia House of Delegates that's gathering national attention outside of his district. Not just because of his bipartisan attitude that gives people a feel-good type of feeling, but the fact that he's a bipartisan leader with a strong libertarian streak that's revitalizing the state's conservative base. I wanted to go down and see what it was like as a candidate was getting ready for re-election.
So, one of the reasons why I guess I got interested in politics in the first place is my mother was the head of a Republican women's group when I was growing up, and so ever since I was 14 or 15, she had me out there knocking doors and helping register voters, and she got me involved in the process at an early age, and I think I ended up appreciating, not just from the policy perspective, but I appreciated the philosophy of it, the ideals behind it, that this was something that was, one, special because we had the opportunity to affect our government. And with that also being special came a certain degree of responsibility as well. And my mom raised me as a single mother, so she was really busy. There's definitely a lot of other things that she could have been doing with her time work-wise and things like that, but she chose to make me and my brother a priority. She chose to make this a priority, and she chose to get us involved so that we could have a better understanding of what our role and responsibility would be with respect to our country.
Nick was a great kid to raise. He was so easy. I've got to tell you, if you were expecting me to come here and dish out the dirt on him, you're not going to get much. He was really a good kid, which I felt very, very blessed because I was a single mom and I had Nick and his brother to raise. I used to sit and listen to people tell stories about their teenagers, horrible stories, and say how much they couldn't wait until their teenagers grew up and left home. And I thought, that's funny. I really like mine. Nick was honest almost to a fault. If anything ever happened, you could count on Nick to come right in and just tell the truth about what had happened. And he is still the same way. He values honesty, and his integrity has just always been intact. He has been an amazing person. I've been proud of him since the day he was born. I will tell you that when he was a teenager, around 14, 15 years old, he was a Civil War expert of sorts. He loved to study it. He could tell you the names of the generals, their horse, their dog, their kids, the name of their house. He seemed to know all the details. So I brought him out here to Virginia to go through the Civil War battlefields, and it was like having our own tour guide. He knew so much about this part of the country and about the history of this country, and it was just a real treat to have him here. The only problem was that when we got to Virginia, he announced to me as he looked around, he said, "I am going to live here someday," which wasn't good news for me since I live on the West Coast. But I am in process of moving out here to be near to Nick and Tina and the grandkids. But he is a great guy. He always has been, and I think that you'll find that he will represent this area beautifully. And if you're the kind of person that values the truth and integrity, he's the guy for you.
I was an unknown candidate trying to run against a 28-year, very liberal incumbent who had a lock on this district for 28 years, and we struck up a friendship immediately based on our past experiences, him being a Special Forces, Army Ranger, and myself being an Army Ranger. And despite him being an NCO and I was an officer, we hit it off and we just had a great time. And Nick helped me get across the line, and I knew he was interested in politics. And then he asked about running for chairman of the committee here, and I thought it was a great idea. And certainly knew that he'd have a bright future in politics if he ran for office, and sure enough, he ran a couple years ago for a delegate, won the seat handed, and he'll win today handily.
Running for elective office was definitely not on the bucket list. It was something that I thought about doing, I guess, to some degree. You know, you have friends tell you, hey, you should run for office one day, which makes you start to seriously wonder if they're actually your friends. But when I was in Iraq in 2008, I think that's when I thought I might start to become a little bit more involved in politics. When Obama got elected in 2008, that was not something I was expecting. It wasn't because I was necessarily thought that John McCain was the great conservative hope or anything like that, although I did very much respect his military service. But to have a candidate that believed that his mission was to fundamentally change this country was something that I found very disturbing, especially when we had a bunch of men and women overseas fighting for what, again, we believed were the fundamentals of our country. I don't think anybody doubts that there's been periods of our history that have been somewhat shameful. But the thing that's always unified, I think, our history is the idea that the ideals that were set out within the Constitution, within the Declaration of Independence, the idea is that government is there to protect your God-given individual liberty, your property rights, that it's not supposed to grow beyond certain boundaries. Those are the ideals that we all strive to live up to. That's the fundamentals of this country. And as I look at the problems that have hit this country, the mistakes that we've made, it hasn't been because of our fundamentals, it's been because of an unwillingness to live up to those ideals, to live up to the fundamentals.
Well, when we were first married, it was a peacetime army, and so we hadn't been at war most of our life. I mean, we had Desert Storm, that was over very quickly, but we were young when that happened. So it was a peacetime army while we were married at first, and but I'll never forget 9/11. I just knew that the peacetime army was over and that Nick was gonna go to war. I didn't know who we were going to war with, but I knew it was an act of war that had happened, and that our family was going to be a very big part of that. And it all really came home to me that, wow, we knew that this was a possibility. You sign on as a peacetime, military family, and all of a sudden it's wartime, and that's what you really signed up for. You knew that this was a possibility, and so at that point it was just preparing for what we would face during that time. Nick ended up going into the Special Forces, which is also known as the Green Berets, and we ended up going through 2 combat tours in Iraq. He missed quite a few birthdays and Christmases and things like that, and we both looked at it as it was both of our duties. We knew it wouldn't be easy. It was really important that our kids know him, even though he wasn't there, and so that's what we did. Just kept it together, and when he came home, we made the best of it. And it was something that we both did for our country because we love our country, and we love the people in it.
In a year that's defined by extremely polarizing partisan politics, the Virginia Republicans have nominated Ed Gillespie as their standard bearer, a former D.C. lobbyist and political consultant and former chairman of the RNC. Gillespie appeals to both the moderates in Northern Virginia, but also those that are seeking jobs and opportunity in the South End, against current Lieutenant Governor Ralph Northam.
People who I've met out here are still hardcore Democrats just because that's how their daddy voted. And they're kind of a little bit harder to shake than some people. So I think being a Republican in the state is an uphill battle. But when you speak to the people of Virginia and you speak to them what their needs are, I think that the Republican Party actually fits their platform for what they're looking for. We have the right message. We have the right candidates. Just here in Virginia, I could just think of so many that are so good, and I wish that we could have these men at every state in our nation, and also at the federal level as well.
In what is his first re-election campaign, Delegate Freitas is facing somebody that has recently moved back to the area from Washington State. Ben Hickson, a computer programmer and entrepreneur who calls himself a progressive libertarian, considers calling himself that in this area because it matches the 30th District's live free or die type of vibe. This lifestyle of not government dependency, but lift yourself up by your own bootstraps. And what he hopes to possibly push himself away from more of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party that's trying to make a resurgence after the crushing defeat of Hillary Clinton. So the question that Republicans like Delegate Nick Freitas have to ask is, what about them makes them unique across the political spectrum for voters in such a divisive battleground state?
I think that what makes him a different kind of Republican is the fact that he understands messaging more so than almost anyone else, Republican or Democrat for that matter, that I've met in politics. When he speaks to someone, he speaks from a perspective of what do they care about? What issues affect them the most? And it's not that he changes his principles or he forgets them depending on who he's speaking to. Quite the opposite. He'll tell people no, actually, when people ask him to do some things that violate his principles. But it's a matter of understanding the person that you're speaking to. Not just trying to preach to them, but trying to understand where they come from. It's listening just as much as it is speaking.
Don't compromise his values and his principles for the field expediency of politics. And to me, that's an endearing quality that I think we need more of in politicians today.
My focus is on individual liberty. It's on expanding liberty. It's on expanding opportunity, but to do that through the proper, or through understanding what government's proper role is, to protect liberty, to protect property. Because when government does that, and it allows free people to work in the marketplace, through voluntary cooperation, not coercion, but voluntary cooperation, I think it's amazing what free people are able to accomplish. But when government oversteps its boundaries, all I can tell you is that I've been to about 20 plus countries, and every single time I see a government overstep its proper role, it always does so in the name of helping the people, and it always ends up hurting the people as a result. And so I'm adamant about keeping government within its proper constitutional boundaries. I think it has an important role to play in society, but it needs to stay put. Because again, when it gains additional power, it does so at the expense of individuals.
How you doing? Hi, I'm Nick Freitas,
I think that a normal person looking at a political volunteer probably thinks that we're nuts, probably thinks that we're crazy. I mean, we're standing outside in the rain, it's 40 degrees, and it's dark at 5 o'clock, and we're standing there till 7. I mean, I just don't think the average person would really comprehend why we would do that. I mean, you've got people who are making phone calls, who get cussed at, who get the doors slammed in their face, who get yelled at, you know, all these things, but they still keep doing it, and they do it mostly with a smile on their face. Young people as young as 14, you know, way more active than I ever was at that age. People who are, you know, their bodies are failing them, but they're still trying to knock doors, they're still trying to make phone calls for us. I mean, it's really incredible that people would sacrifice so much for this cause.
So we have an hour left before polls close. What's going through your mind?
We're all ready for Wednesday at this point. No, I'll tell you what, it's encouraging because the weather has not been great today. The whole day it's been pretty bad, and turnout's been good across the board. So I think we're going to do well. It's been encouraging, but like everyone right now, it's just we're ready to pick up signs, go to the election night party, get warm. So yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's all in the detail. You want every precinct except for East.
Okay. Yeah. So out of all the precincts throughout the districts, right? We won every single precinct except for one. That was East Fairfax. So East Fairfax, get your act together. Again, there's a lot to celebrate within Culpeper County tonight. We got a new member of the school board, Mr. Marshall Keene. We made sure we sent back a trusted conservative to the town council with John Russell. And y'all are stuck with me for at least 2 more years. Look, as we watch the polls come in, there's some stuff that's obviously going to be a little bit frustrating tonight. All right, we're not sure of the House of Delegates that we're going to go back to. We're not sure what it's going to look like with respect to the governor, the attorney general, and the lieutenant governor. All right, and when things like that happen, it becomes very easy to ask yourself, okay, why do we keep fighting? And some of you have heard this story before, but I'll just tell it again. Again, when I was in Iraq in 2008 and Obama got elected, when I got home, my whole attitude was, I'm done fighting. I'm done fighting for people that don't care about it. All right. But then when my family gets to know all of you, we meet all of you, and we see other people who do care about it, who are willing to fight for it. We don't fight because we're guaranteed to win every single time. We fight because it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? And in the space that we had, some control over, we pulled victories. Right? That's what we're supposed to do. That's our job. We're not always going to know what Fairfax is going to do. God help us, right? But in the space we control, we made sure that we got out the vote. We did our job. Right? And that's what's going to happen. That's how you actually get to maintain those majorities. That's how you win statewide, is when you have more of those areas replicating what was done in Culpeper, Orange, and Madison, what was done in the leadership of guys like Tyler Adams, where they get that organization together with our local committees, with our local Republican women's groups, when they all come together and they say, you know what, I can't control what happens in Arlington, but I can control what happens on my block, and I'm going to make sure I do control it. That's what you did, and that's the difference. And you see the difference in how the numbers came out in the areas y'all control.
That's right.
So listen, when we leave here, right, I don't care what the numbers say right here. What we've proved is we've got an organization in the 30th District. We've got an organization in the Culpeper. Clearly there's other parts of the Commonwealth that need more of us. All right? They need more of us. So that's okay. We're going to provide that help. We're going to provide that support. We're going to go to where we're needed to go in order to make sure that they can have the sort of nights that we get to have down here in the 30th District. I look forward to the next 2 years to continue to fight that. Allison Brophy Champion was asking me, she's like, well, what do you plan to do? Can the people trust you to continue to go on and do what you say you're going to do? I said, oh yeah, they can trust in that. Yeah. I said, well, are you going to work with Ralph Northam? I said, well, yeah, when he agrees with us, we'll be happy to work with him. But again, the point is this. Right? I don't answer to Ralph Northam. I don't answer to any of these other guys. I answer to the people of the 30th District, and I answer to the principals. I told you what I believed in. You believed me, and you elected me to go and do that in Richmond. And you can count on that for the next 2 years. So thank you very much for everything that you've done for us and our family. Thank you all very much.
What I began to realize from when I started filming to when I finally drove back to Northern Virginia was that I came to go ahead and see what the candidate himself was going about doing on election day, but I walked away of learning so much more. Behind Freitas' team is a vision of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What Delegate Freitas has shown is that when you have a good leader, when you have somebody that speaks truth to power, but most importantly, can bridge the divide between people from different walks of life for a common vision of freedom, that is what makes a statesman.